Welcome to Ruby Thursday. I'm Melissa Wanish. This is Ruby snack number 58, Avoid Breaking the Law of Demeter. In this episode, you'll learn what is the Law of Demeter and tips on decoupling to avoid breaking the law. If you'd like to code along, you can clone the Ruby Thursday example app with this branch, which is the Ruby snack just before this one, Ruby snack 57. There's not a whole lot of code in this episode, but if you'd like to put it in, go ahead and clone the example app. What is the Law of Demeter? All right, straight from Wikipedia. I'm going to go ahead and read this whole thing. An object A can request a service, call a method, of an object instance B, but object A should not reach through object B to access yet another object, C, to request its services. Doing so would mean that object A implicitly requires greater knowledge of object B's internal structure. Instead, B's interface should be modified, if necessary, so it can directly serve object A's request, propagating it to any relevant subcomponents. Alternatively, A might have a direct reference to object C and make the request directly to that. If the law is followed, only object B knows its own internal structure. In the object-oriented programming world, it's important that everything stays separate. And this Law of Demeter helps you think about that and do that so that you're not asking B for information that A shouldn't know. I'll get to examples here in just a moment. The advantage of following the Law of Demeter is that the resulting software tends to be more maintainable and adaptable, since objects are less dependent on the internal structure of other objects. Object containers can be changed without reworking their callers. So you can change things more easily if you follow this law. A disadvantage would be that although the LOD increases the adaptiveness of a software system, it may also result in having to write many wrapper methods to propagate calls to components. In some cases, this can add noticeable time and space overhead. So if you're having to write lots and lots of methods to make sure that you don't break the law with lots of dots, we'll get to that in a moment, then maybe it's not worth following this law to the letter. Okay, so some simplifications here. So basically, you may have heard this, you don't want to play with strangers, as in your objects don't want to play with strangers, they want to play with friends, things that are closely related. Use only one dot. So if you're getting to 2 dots, then that's too many. It does help troubleshoot faster, and that's part of that maintainability. If something is nil in some way, then you can find what is nil a lot faster. Don't forget to be mindful of it in your tests as well, because that will help you troubleshoot whether it's the code or the test that needs to be refactored. So again, the Law of Demeter is a very helpful design tool to keep in mind these things. However, it's not an unbreakable law. All right, which it reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean and the line, and thirdly, the code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules, right? So it says Law of Demeter, that's what they coined it, but it's more of a guideline. It's a way to make your code, yes, more maintainable, easier to read, that kind of thing. But if it becomes cumbersome to your code base, then don't use it in certain cases. Let's get to an example. Currently in the Ruby Thursday app, we have in our Starships show page, we have eval for evaluations .crewmember.name. So here's an example. So eval or evaluation would be A, crew member would be B, and name would be C. So the evaluation is reaching through its crew member to find out the name that it wants to show in this view. And since the Law of Demeter is widely accepted as something you should follow, Rails has a helper method for it. It's called delegate. So in your evaluation model, you can delegate name to crew member, so the crew member's name, and we're going to say prefix true, and that's how we're going to write our helper method. And we're going to say allow nil true. So just in case that name is nil or crew member is nil, it's not going to totally blow up your page. This is especially true for views. If it's something where it really needs to be there, then you should take out allow nil true and find that error when you're doing your tests. If you put this helper method in, then you can use eval.crewmember_name. So that prefix is what allows us to say crew member as the prefix, and then underscore name, and that is the attribute we're looking for. So let's add it to our spec and try it out. Well, now we'll expect the page to have the content at crewmember1.name. And you'll see in our spec we already have at crewmember, so that's how we can go ahead and test it. Here we are in our Starship Show page to show you where exactly this line in question is. And now let's go ahead to our models, and let's go ahead and in our evaluation model put that helper method in and save that. Now let's go back to the view, and instead of the dot, that evil second dot, let's go ahead and put the underscore and save that. Now let's go and add that to our spec. We're refactoring here, so I'm going to go ahead and just add it to our spec where we view the evaluations on the Starship page. So we'll add another expectation so that we see that crew member name. Now we're going ahead and running it, and it passes. It shows that name, so it's showing the name without breaking the law of Demeter. Here's an example of the maintainability. What if the crew member changes name to first name and last name? I have a client who's thinking about doing it. They have a name field, but now they want to address people by their first name. So you would remove the delegate, and then you could add a custom method. So you would define crew member underscore name, and it can be anything you want. In this case, we're going to go ahead and say it's the first name and the last name. Now here's an example when two dots are okay. For example, if we wanted to make the star date look a little differently on the view, we can call strift time directly on the star date, because strift time is actually still a friend of star date because star date is a date object. That's its type. And so they're still friends. And so they're still friends. We're not calling yet another object, all right? So that anything that's a Ruby method can be tagged on with another dot, because it doesn't totally make sense to make a whole other method in this case. As long as stardate is a date object, then strift time is going to work. And if stardate is nil, then you need to know about that. Let's go ahead and put that in as well. So we're going to add that to our view. Thus, we need to add it to our test. Otherwise, it will fail because it's not in the right format. So running it again, just to be sure, and it passes. So that's an overview of the Law of Demeter. Again, it's not a law, so if you haven't been using it, that's okay. But I do recommend going forward using this and reducing your dots. You are going to find that it makes much more maintainable code. Now there are various opinions about this, and there are 2 blog posts I'm sharing here. So you can read a little bit more about how other people think about the Law of Demeter. And here's more information on how to use delegate. That's it for this Ruby snack. Thank you so much for watching. If you are not already on my mailing list, head on over to rubythursday.com to get more awesomeness in your inbox. And if you are not subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and click that button. You get the episodes just a little bit before everyone else. If you have any questions, it's best to leave them on YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.